Good morning, folks. Councilman Mike Rasmussen here, coming to you with a statement from myself regarding the special council meeting that we had last night, April 8th, 2025. The special council meeting last night was to have a hearing, which is a formal process regarding the eligibility of George Coates to run for the town mayor. I'm going to start off with a little bit of kind of what that process looks like, to sort of ground that, and then talk about why, and what that looked like to me, and what decision was made on my part, and sort of so that people have an idea of where I'm at, because obviously there's lots of Facebook warriors and people Monday morning quarterbacking something that most of them would never stand up and actually try and address themselves. But those of us who actually put ourselves on the line and put ourselves in that position, we should be willing to stand up and at least tell people what that looks like and defend it. So that's what this is about. As far as the process of what this looks like. So if you want to run for any of the elected offices, the council members or the mayor in town, you have to sign up to run. It's not very hard to do, and for all the people who say that they're going to do it, it's not really a challenge. Go online, you fill out a form that's on the town website that you submit, and then you also have to fill out a little state form, and you have to complete a background check. On the form that you fill out for the town it's an affidavit, and it says that you certify that you meet the qualifications to run for town council. That is, that you have to be at least 21 years of age, you cannot be convicted of any felonies, you have to be a resident, and you have to be a bona fide domiciliary in the town of Smyrna for at least 1 year prior to the date of the election. Once you sign that form, it's submitted. The town of Smyrna, the town manager of the town of Smyrna, basically collects all of that information, verifies that people have signed that form and certify where they're at, and that they have submitted their background check, and then presents the town council with a list, basically a ballot. Here's the people who have signed up, who have certified that they meet all of these qualifications, and here is their background check that we want them to complete. Basically, what does it say on your driver's license, and what does it say, and are you willing to put your name on this thing that says that you meet those qualifications? So we then approved that list, and on that list this year there were 2 people who were running for mayor, 3 people, myself being one of them, running for the at-large seat. That begins the process of the election in the town of Smyrna. That happened on March 17th. So basically the election process starts March 17th, and then it goes until the election day, which is April 29th this year. After that process begins, there is a process by which somebody's candidacy can be challenged, who is on that candidate list. You can't challenge somebody's candidacy 3 months prior to that list being created. That candidate list has to be put out there. And so in this instance, members of the community challenged the residency, or challenged the domicile of one of the people who signed up to run for the mayor, George Coates. That challenge begins a process by which the town has to have a hearing, and that hearing is sort of, as was laid out to us by our attorney last night, where the town council is required to sort of act as a jury and to hear evidence, consider what is presented, and ultimately make a decision about whether or not that person meets those true requirements to be on the ballot for the position in which they want to run. That hearing is it's an opportunity for both the town to sort of act as like the plaintiff, maybe, in this sort of a circumstance, and for the person who's being challenged to present evidence about whether or not, why they think that they meet those qualifications. I made a statement last night during this that I think that that process is inherently flawed. I think that it's very unreasonable, especially in a town the size of Smyrna, where everybody kind of knows everyone, that any number of town council could truly be an independent arbiter, like a juror in a trial, as was laid out, where you are truly independent from and don't have any sort of tie-in to the question that is being raised. We're not judges. We're not lawyers. This is a question that's put to the town council that ought to be handled by somebody who I think has a much better legal understanding of what these things look like. However, the state doesn't do these things. The Attorney General doesn't do these things. They are handed off to municipalities to address how they see fit, and this is the process that is laid out in our town code. So that is the process by which we need to follow. Whether I agree with it or not, that is what we signed up to do, is follow that process. So there are 7 members of council, because one of those members of council is running for mayor position as well, Councilwoman Gott. She was obviously recused from this. We had 2 other members of council who chose to recuse themselves from this process. They do not have to state the reason why they are choosing to recuse themselves from this process. They just have to say that they do not feel that they could be objective in that process. And 2 other members chose to recuse themselves because they felt that they were not able to be objective. So that leaves 4 people on council who are there, sitting there to hear the arguments and the information that is presented, to ask questions, and ultimately to make a decision of whether or not the candidate, in this case George, was someone who should be on that ballot or not. So it's a small town, right? And George was actually very clear, and the meeting was rescheduled. Originally it was set for, I think, 6 or 6:30. It was moved back to make sure that George was able to attend it. It was scheduled hastily. You can challenge whether or not why that happened. You can't schedule a meeting until after there's a challenge. You could wait another week and schedule that meeting, and wait another week, and then the election would only be 2 weeks away versus 3 weeks away. That's a no-win situation, is what it is. There's no good way to get around the fact that you have to do something like that quickly. Again, I don't think that this process that we have established in our town code is a good idea. And I think it should be certainly considered and changed and addressed. And I'm sure that there are better ways to try and do this. But it is what we have and what we have to work with. So the meeting was scheduled for that evening. Everyone showed up. There's a lot of people on the Zoom call. There was a lot of people there in council, some of them quite rude, quite disruptive, trying to, I guess, make themselves feel good about themselves rather than actually be authentic participants in this process. But that's neither here nor there. So I will say sort of where I'm at on this. Then I had a conversation with George months ago when he was interested in running. I've talked with George, quickly prior to that, but I never had a chance to sit down and talk with George in detail about what he wanted to do, what he was thinking about in running for council or for mayor. At that time, I was very, very seriously running for mayor myself, because we've seen elections where only one person is on the ballot and there isn't a choice being presented. And I think that no matter what election it is, even people running against me, I think it's great that there are people who are actually willing to put themselves out there, put their name on the ballot, stand in front of people and tell them what they think, and then ultimately back that up with their action. It is far easier to be a keyboard warrior on Facebook than it is to truly stand up and put yourself out there. And so in the conversation that I had with George, I was very excited because he's a person who I think is pretty level-headed. His background in business and understanding in finance and having to struggle with those type of questions is something I think we need more of on council. It's something I think I bring to council, and I'd like to see more of that. And so after that conversation, I left feeling very confident that I was like, this would be great. If George is on the ballot, then we have at least two people on the ballot who I think care deeply about this town and understand the struggles and are hopefully willing to do what's necessary to move that forward. I didn't sit there and ask George if he slept at the house that he died. I didn't even know where he lived. Or I didn't even know which house he owned on Main Street at the time. So George goes through that process just like I did. I filled out my forms. I got my background check and everything done. And when it came time to certify the election or certify the candidates, the town manager presented a list. That is the point at which my understanding is the town manager believes that all of these people meet the qualifications to run for office as has been required. They have signed off on the things and they should be placed on the ballot. And then the town council approves that list and the election begins. The question that was raised last night, and there's a legal definition, a number of legal definitions that come into it, but there are things that I think are important, is that the standard by which somebody needs to meet is not that they are a resident of the town of Smyrna. I think most of us think we know what that means. I certainly thought I did. And on my passport and my driver's license and all of those other things, it says what my address is. And it's in the town of Smyrna. And so that to me is the residency. But the hearing last night started off with a definition of the other piece of that requirement, which is that you are a bona fide domiciliary, which means a domicile is your home, not your residence, your home. And it was explained to us. That went over multiple times by the attorney. He read it. He read multiple definitions of it. We had him read it a few times because that is really what is in question here. It's not about what's on paper as far as your driver's license. I own a building downtown. I could have my driver's license registered here. I could have all my stuff registered at my business address if I wanted to. That doesn't make it my home, right? And so that's what we had to sit there and wrestle with last night is the address that is presented and put onto the paperwork really that person's home? And I struggled with this very, very deeply. It was not an easy thing. It's still not an easy thing, right? Because I have to ask myself ethically, morally, what do I think that means? And where do I stand on what that is? So when I stop and I think about what someone's home is, based on what we were told as far as the definition of what a domicile is, it's the place where you get up in the morning and get your kids off to school. It's the place where you celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. It's the place where you get up on Christmas morning and open presents, right? It is the place where, at the end of the day, when you've had a hard day at work, you look forward to going to, because that is home. And, while George made an impassioned plea about how much he cares about the house that he has on Main Street, and that he has been working on fixing that house up for a number of years and restoring it back so it can be a beautiful piece that can be a part of this community and help teach and embrace the history of the community. It's also a place where he said he doesn't sleep there, right? The house barely even has power. His shop is behind it where he goes to work every day, and he's got a kitchen there and a bathroom there and a place where he could sleep there. But it's not the place where he sleeps all the time. He talked about living in Clayton with his family so he could take care of his father, which is an admirable thing to do, and it's a thing that I think any of us would hope that we have the ability to do something like that. But when it comes down to it, the definition and the requirement that's in the town code is, does that person make that residence, that what they are saying, the place where they live, is that really their home? And has it been their home for at least a year prior to the date of the election? And as much as I like George, and I'm happy that he was putting himself out there, and I was really excited to see a true election for the mayor. It did not meet that definition. I could not ethically and morally tell myself that that place, that building on Main Street where George goes to work every day is the place that is his family's home. And that's what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with George. Like I said, I wanted George to run. I was excited when George signed up to run. I don't think anybody wants to be in this position. The last thing any of us need is another black eye for this town. But I also cannot look at my kids, look at my staff members, and just bend what I think is ethically and morally correct because it might, be beneficial in some other way. That's not what making hard decisions is, right? If you want people who want to make easy decisions, make convenient decisions, all those sort of things, I'm not your guy. That's just it. I'm not going to compromise my what I think is ethically correct simply because it may be something that's desirable. So the decision that was made last night was not easy. People were obviously upset about it. I have to live with all of the decisions that we make, and I have to be the one, to tell my family about those decisions and things like that and be able to stand behind them. And I do, and I do stand behind that decision. I think that is, I think what happened based on how that needed to go down, based on what is required in our code, I think that it's something that I don't have a problem with. I don't agree that the code is right. I don't agree that the process is good. I think that those are flawed, but the process as we have it is what it is. There's probably legitimate questions that need to be asked about does this or should this change whether or not the election carries on as it is scheduled to. Those are legal questions. They're not questions that town council can ultimately step up and just invalidate an entire election. There is legal processes, despite what people might want, that we would need to go through. This was mentioned last night. This, no matter what, if this moves forward and essentially by default Councilwoman Gott becomes the mayor, that will absolutely taint her mayorship and her ability to act as a mayor and a true sort of someone who feels that they're representative of the town. It may come down to her call on that, not mine, not anybody else's, and not the council's, because we have to follow what the legal process is, regardless of whether or not we feel one way or the other. So that's where we end up. It's how we find ourselves in this sort of a position where the rules state that we need to do one thing when we're forced to ask a question of somebody's domicile. We have a process by which we need to go through. The decision that was made last night is the decision that I have to live with, and not going to be able to be changed. So I hope that there are folks who want to step up and run. It is really pretty discouraging when you stop and you look at all of the people, 10,000-ish voters or so in this town, and sometimes we struggle to get any candidates to sign up to run for office. I spend a lot of time talking with lots of people, and I understand the challenges, right? I have a young family, I run 2 businesses, I'm on a lot of different boards, I'm engaged with lots of different things. This is a thankless job. You don't get paid, all you get is grief from people. It is a truly thankless job. And so I'm not surprised that a lot of people don't want to sign up for it, but maybe this is a thing that gets more people to sign up and want to actually put themselves out there and try. George certainly put himself out there to try. I wish he lived in that house. I wish he met the definition because I want more people to be putting themselves out there and trying to run. But I cannot ethically bend on something like that just because I want more people on the ballot. So that's where I'm at. I know there's a lot of people upset. I've received lots of people who told me that they're upset. I've received lots of people who thank me for doing the right thing. If everyone agrees, if everyone was saying you did the right thing, then I would have probably imagined I did something wrong. If you're not pissing some people off and making some people happy, chances are you're not truly wrestling with the questions that are put in front of you. So that's where I'm at. Obviously, if you have questions, reach out to me. If there are things, let me know. I'm always willing to talk to people who want to authentically and legitimately engage in any sort of conversation, rather than, if you want to be a Facebook warrior, go ahead. That does absolutely nothing to help me, help our community, or do anything. If you want to actually get involved, if you want to understand the challenges that are faced by our town, reach out. I'm always happy to talk. And as I've done with the other ones, I will archive this video on YouTube so that Facebook doesn't erase it, and you can come back and watch it whenever you want. So, thank you very much, everyone.